So, welcome to another episode of Talk With Us. I'm Natalie, the Media Director of WIT, and I'll be co hosting along with Cressida. And we are joined by our lovely guest, Sasha. So, for those in our audience who don't know you, would you like to tell them a bit about yourself, Sasha?
Sure. Hi, Natalie. Hi, Cressida. Thank you for having me. I am Sasha, and I was and am the lecturer for Comp 1511, but also DESN and a whole bunch of other things. So my background is in HCI and education and all things in between. I really care about how people learn and how to help them learn better.
Really cool. And you have a really impressive academic background from research and obtaining your PhD. So, what were your interests in your youth, like growing up from high school, uni?
Well, so always teaching. I've always loved teaching, but I knew I could never be a school teacher. That is a really hard job because kids are just hard work. But I've always loved teaching and having that like one-on-one and seeing those aha moments. But then as I kind of went through school, I really loved computers as well. So I went in to do a computer engineering degree. And as I was doing it, I realized I love it, but I don't love it. I think I want to still go into teaching and education. So that's what I came back after being in industry and went back into doing a PhD in education.
Absolutely. That's really admirable of you. And I love the way that you've dedicated yourself to this mission. So why did you, well, I guess you've already answered this question a little bit, but why did you choose a lecturer? Your academic background would let you do a lot of other things.
Well, I don't know. Teaching is something you kind of do for the love of it almost. It's not, you could be doing, I guess, other things in industry, but being able to help people and seeing students achieve the most amazing things, I've always found that to be amazing, and supporting them, it has been, I think, has been just like the most amazing thing about this job. And then seeing these students come through, students that I've worked with and I've supervised for their honors and helped through, and then seeing them do amazing things after that, just moving on and doing way bigger and better things than I could have ever done has been incredible. And just being able to stay in touch with all of them, and I don't know, warm and fuzzies, basically, just being able to make any type of difference in someone's life.
Yeah, for sure. And you have such an influential impact being a lecturer, teaching so many students and having them learn from you. So you've previously taught Comp 1511 and coming back to it as well in term 3, and currently teaching Design 2000. So do you prefer one course over the other? And what makes it so great to teach those two?
I mean, they're very different courses. In 1511, you're there at the beginning of someone's journey, and you really have a chance to influence whether they love it or they hate it, or they, most of the time they don't really feel very neutral about it. You either love it or you kind of hate it. And, it's been amazing getting emails from people that have changed over to computer science majors after taking 1511 because they've loved the whole problem solving and programming aspect of it, because programming is actually a really hard thing to learn. You're learning a whole new language, but then also you're learning a whole new way to problem solve. And often it's not given enough credit that it is a really, really difficult thing to do. And then you have this varied ability as well. So sometimes you'll be in a class and 10 of those people have programmed before. So you start, doubting yourself and feeling like you're not good enough to be there. And I think I've never seen it so much as in programming that happen. So I really enjoy being able to kind of make sure that people know it's actually a really hard thing to do. It's not easy. Just enjoy it, enjoy getting to know it. And also being there at the start when you can help people know what services are available to them. And also, when people come from school, they're used to getting such high marks and they're going to uni. It's so depressing what a high mark at uni is, but it's such a difference. I watched a video, it was on, one of those wasting of time video reels. And it was, this guy was like getting a 79% at school, and he's there like crying. And then it says it forwards and getting a 50.2% at uni, and he's there doing a dance. And that's like, nothing summarizes it better than that, just this change of expectations. You've come in, you're surrounded by everyone who's amazing as well, everyone anyway. So it's that kind of place where you can make a difference to someone in the beginning of their degree. And then design, I've always loved design. I think design thinking is such a huge thing and it should be used more in engineering, and just that user-centric design and putting the user at the center. Even in 1511, I've always tried to say, think about who you're writing this code for, and someone else is reading it too as well. So there's a whole bunch of elements. It's not just you sitting alone in silos. We always work in teams, but also being able to design these kinds of packages for the people that use them. I don't know, something amazing in it. I love it. So those are my two loves. They're very different as well. So it looks really bizarre when I'm like, I love this, but I also love this. I love this so much. I wish I could bring it together.
Well, it certainly sounds like you're really passionate, and I think students are really lucky to have you as a lecturer. So you talked a bit about problem solving. So how valued do you think problem solving is? And is it a trans-industry skill? And, students who want to improve their problem solving skills, do you have any resources to recommend?
Problem solving is really hard to do, especially if you've never seen these types of problems. So this is where the cognitive load stuff comes in. Sorry, just a bit of jargon. But so it's really, when you first start looking at these problems, your problem space is huge because you've never seen anything similar to this before. And so you feel overwhelmed. You don't know where to start. And I think that's what puts students off. It's not learning the syntax and how to actually approach solving the problem. So I actually think that there should be more emphasis on problem solving in those first years to start with. And perhaps we might be moving towards that. Who knows? And so really the only way to get better at it is to do lots of similar problems and to build up your problem solving abilities. Because if you've never seen a problem before, you might not be able to do it. But if you've seen something similar before, you can use lots of different strategies like analogies, then something similar, a worked example. So you can actually work yourself through it and you can help to get to it. But also, like in programming, an important part of it is to think about the problem first without any code next to it. Set out what will you do to solve it, and then, add the code to it. And again, then in design thinking, we also have huge problems, these kinds of like wicked problems, they're called often, that are solved by these strategies. And you go out and you talk to people and you see what is actually the problem. What is my problem space? Where do I come into it? So it's all about, not being, I guess, overwhelmed by the size of the problem, but rather try to break it down and try and approach it from different angles as well, and not being scared of having a problem and not knowing how to solve it, because, you're always going to have problems you're not going to know how to solve, both in your personal life, in your academic life, in your professional life. So it'd be, just kind of breaking it up into parts, going out, talking to people, and finding out what you can do to narrow down the problem space so you're able to solve it.
Yeah, for sure. And problem solving, as you say, it's not just within comp sci, it's beyond. It's like our everyday life as well, and something we continue to develop skills. So if you weren't a lecturer, what do you think you would be doing?
Oh, that's a good question. I've done a few things before I was a lecturer. I don't know if I'd be doing any of those things again. I'd probably go into, I'd have to say, it's a very curly question. Again, I don't know. I get always so excited by things. I would probably go into, I'd return to UI UX. I love designing the experience, talking to people, and I love the visual aspect of that as well.
And when you mention visual aspect, do you think there's a creativity element required in comp sci, especially with design?
I think there's a creativity aspect required even without design. Comp sci, again, those really wicked problems, you have to be creative and think out the box to be able to solve them. And then that creative side also, in the front end, thinking about, there's a bit of creativity, a bit of guidelines, and it all has to come together. But it has to be aesthetically pleasing, because once people find something aesthetically pleasing, they're a lot more forgiving of everything else. So, there's always creative sides to everything. But even in a piece of code, there's a lot of creativity that has to go into solving something in a way that, thinking outside the box, you might be able to solve it something a lot better than what it has been done in the past.
Yeah, I definitely think creative is an important aspect of computer science, and like people have so much creativity. Some may solve a problem one way and then other people might solve it different, which is really awesome. Of course, talking about careers careers and what you would do, especially with design and all of that. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? More professionally.
Yeah. Oh, these are you're asking all the hard questions. Let's just lay out and think about life. I think I would love to stay at the university and continue teaching and doing some research into what things help students learn as well, because I think and what improves. So one of my interests is what can improve that CS1 sort of course, what can improve the learning, how can we retain students, how can we support them and help them. And so I would love to kind of take that further and be able to find at-risk students and offer them more help and more support when they might need it, and being able to pick that with some sort of model so that no one falls through the cracks. So I think, yeah, that's the 5-year plan. Really kind of try and find where the gaps are and try and help those students as well, because when people do well, they're doing really well, they don't need as much support from you, but often the people that are not students that are not coming or that are struggling, they're the ones that are harder to find and then harder to support as well.
Yeah, and I would assume that being a lecturer must be very stressful at times. So what do you enjoy with your doing in your spare time?
I've got small children and large dogs, so my whole life is just walking people to parks basically, and running people at parks to zone out their energy. Let's go, people. Stick, chase ball, and that's what I do. Well, no, I mean I do other things outside, but a lot of my life is spent in parks outside of being a lecturer. Yeah, I mean I used to play a lot of sport before kids, but then you have to travel so much around Sydney, I've kind of had that on.
And what sports did you used to play?
I used to play hockey.
Oh, nice.
Very good for getting any frustration.
Yeah,
That pug takes a beating. I mean, obviously, hockey sounds really awesome, and I mean, I guess if you're gonna let off steam, then some things in life are difficult. How do you know you're stressed, and how do you deal with that stress?
You really do have wonderful questions. I know when I'm overwhelmed. I can feel it. Like I get the noise in my head kind of expands, and that's when you really need to switch off all notifications and go and sit outside for a few hours, or go, I don't know, for a run, and just kind of try and remove yourself from that sort of from everything for a little bit. And I think these days as well, it's so much harder to remove yourself because there's a lot of pinging happening all the time, and messaging and so on and so forth. So like turning off notifications, having some sort of boundaries is very
absolutely. And I guess stress also comes from tasks that you struggle to find motivation for. How do you find motivation for difficult tasks?
Yeah, so I find the best thing to do, and here we go back to cognitive load theory, break it up into smaller tasks, because as soon as you can start ticking things off and achieving something, you feel a lot more motivated to do it. But also I don't know if you've ever heard of the Pomodoro technique. I use that a lot because for me, the hardest part is getting started. But once I do 5 or 6 minutes and I'm in it, I won't stop for hours. I can keep going. So it's these first bit of actually moving on and getting started. So I put that timer on and make sure that I do the 5 minutes. And then after that, it just kind of flows. Breaking it down is one of the best strategies I've ever done. And because then you feel like you can do it.
Yeah, and likewise, breaking it down, it kind of reminds me of an episode of The Office with making a list and just breaking it down and then being able to tick it off as going along. So do you have any mentors or people you look up to?
Yeah, so I in the School of Engineering, I've had an associate professor, Nadine Marcus. She was my, oh gosh, I've known her for ages because she was my co-supervisor for my honours thesis. So it's been a very long relationship, and she has been always very supportive. And I guess she's always very supportive of women in computing, and that's been a huge impact for me as well, because that's something that I would like to do as well. There's still, not that many women in computing, not even from like when I was at uni, I was almost always the only girl in the class. Like, yeah, there's 2 or 3 girls. I mean, it's still not really, and it's been it's been a few decades since I've been at uni. So it's not really, I don't think, a huge improvement, even though the numbers have doubled. They haven't doubled from a lot. They've doubled from like 1 to become 2. So I think we need to, and as women, we need to support other women as well, and to make sure that it's a safe environment and that someone is helping them and, making sure that they're aware of everything that they can access and all the, wonderful things and potential that is possible for them as well. Because it's easy when you're surrounded by like different type of energy. It's easy to kind of like recede into the background a bit and not want to kind of rock the boat.
Were you exposed to comp sci growing up?
A little bit. I put together a computer when I was about 7 with my uncle, one of those first computers. That was very exciting. And then, our games were like on audio tapes and you had to wait 20 minutes and for it to load up and you couldn't move. You shook the floor, it would be all done. So I also think it was a great ploy from parents to just keep their kids still for like 20 minutes at a time. And so we just had to sit quietly and just wait as it like tried to load up from a tape, like an audio. It was those days, and the games were so slow.
And as you mentioned, with importance of women supporting women, do you find that you're treated differently in the industry because you're a woman?
I don't know. I've had both. I really think it depends on the team. I've had both types of. I've been like one of 2 women on the whole floor, and it was a great work environment. I never felt out of place or anything like that. It was fantastic. It was so inclusive and fun, and then I've been in other places where it's not like that, where you're just like ostracized. So it really depends on the group of people and that group environment, and the team leads as well, who are really kind of putting out that environment. They're the ones that are in charge creating that sort of atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with team dynamics there. How do you think people could move to be more inclusive and welcoming to everyone in the industry?
Hang on, it just kind of cut out a little bit. Can you please question?
Of course.
It cut out as you were doing.
Of course. So I totally agree with you on the inclusivity part and the team dynamics. So how do you think leaders or maybe people in positions of influence could, what strategies could they implement to make those environments feel more inclusive to all sorts of people?
Yeah, well, I always think, to start with, just at the very beginning, I always think, as I was growing up, my mum's number one and really only rule, because she was a loose unit, but her only rule ever was, you have to be nice to everyone. You are friends with everyone. Unless someone's mean to you, you walk away. That's it. But it was always, I remember when we were very little kids, a few of my friends, we were mean to a little boy that lived next door. It was horrible because he looked, he was different. And mum she marched us there by the backs of, and we were like 5 at the time, but she basically picked us up by the collars, marched us over there. We had to apologize sincerely. We had to play the whole day, and then the next day and the day after and the day after, she would constantly be bringing this boy, over with us to play with us until, you kind of learned, actually, we're all the same, really. Like, we all really want the same things. And I think if you kind of put out that we are friends with everyone, we're all, everyone really deep inside wants the same things, to be spoken to nicely, to be loved, to be, so it's important to also kind of show those qualities as well, and to always be open to other people. And you have so much to learn from everyone else as well. What would you learn if you only ever hung out with people that are like you? Nothing.
Absolutely. And and as a lecturer, I guess you have a small part to play in that. And how do you try to do that with your lecture and your teaching?
We've had in the lectures, we've had a few people trolling the lecture, I suppose, saying inappropriate things, and I will always stop the lecture. We'll moderate those people out, try and find out who they are, have a discussion with them that it's not appropriate behavior, and I'll start each session with saying, I will not tolerate rude behavior towards anyone, and I strongly encourage my students to come to me if someone is not treating them in an appropriate way. And we have had that in the past, and we have dealt with it as well. So I think it's important to not just pay lip service to it, but to then follow through and do something about it as well, which we have been trying to do, even though they can be quite uncomfortable situations. But it's important to not let it slide, because you let it slide once, people will do it again.
Yeah, important to for people to take responsibility and accountability of their own actions. And on a more upbeat note, what is something from your career that's been the most exciting so far?
I think, well, Oh,
All the moments are exciting.
Yeah, there's been so many nice, exciting things. I don't know, I love working with people. So like coming back to CSE, I don't know if the students realize this, but CSE is actually full of the most wonderful people. And just coming back to CSE felt very much like back home. Yeah, I think that's always been a highlight, working in such a supportive team environment where people are helping everyone else.
Yeah, and do you think CSE how is CSE well, obviously CSE is very different to other faculties, but what do you think makes it so great? Is there like something fundamentally that makes it so great, or several components?
I don't know, but I've been trying to figure it out, but what I can say is that it's been lovely for, like, the people in it have been lovely for a really long time. And so I think it must be something about CSE, because it really is a nice place to work at. I think. I mean, there's issues, but there's issues everywhere. But the overarching thing is that, everyone not only works towards their own research, but they always are out there to help you as well. So I think it's really nice that people always kind of give everyone else the time of day and always have the time to discuss things with you. And I think that's important. I also think, I don't know, computing people just are more relaxed. No one's like hanging out in a business suit kind of thing. Everyone is a lot more, I don't know, it feels a lot more at home, kind of, yeah, you're not there in a formal attire and you're always like switched on. You can be a little bit more yourself. And I think that's what a lot of the people are, more themselves. So they're a lot more comfortable, I guess.
Absolutely. CSE, I think some of the best people you ever meet are from CSE. No bias here, but yeah, but they're really awesome. And I guess working in CSE, being a lecturer is not always a simple task. What do you think people think is easy, but it's actually very difficult?
I don't know. What do you think is easy? Your students, what do you reckon would be easy for a lecturer? And I'll debunk it.
I always thought that lecturers would find putting the content together easy.
Oh, okay. So for design lectures, it sometimes takes me 3 days to put together a 2-hour lecture, because I go out looking for examples and then I overdo it. I don't know does anyone think that going out to do a lecture is easy? I think maybe sometimes people think that's the easy part. I used to go, and a lot of people at CSE are, a bit more reserved, but you used to walk into that lecture theatre before COVID, obviously, and used to think, why do I do this to myself? I don't really want to stand in front of so many people. But then you start and then everything goes great. But it takes practice to kind of develop these skills. I don't know, but it's still lots of fun, because you get to know the students and you engage with the students, and I think that's the best part of it.
Yeah, and what have you learned over the years of teaching? Is there something that you've learned more about when you're teaching more students? Oh, I should be doing this or something else?
Yeah, so I usually reflect after almost every lecture what went well and what didn't go well, and then I'll try and improve it for the next lecture. But I think like teaching is one of those things that is constantly evolving and changing. Yes, there's different pedagogies, but it matters what the cohort is as well, where they're at, their levels. So then you have to adjust it based on, even different semesters, you might adjust what you're doing. And like that's what I will often do. Sometimes I'll fall a bit behind because I've gone over something twice or 3 times. Then other times I'll move ahead, so I'll come up with a different concept to cover. So it depends on the cohort. You really have to just constantly be able to kind of squeeze things in or squeeze things out based on what's going on, and adjust your examples as well to where the students are at.
100%. I think teaching is just such a rabbit hole you can fall down, just because you start and then you're like, oh wait, I can do this in a better way, and then you just keep going and going and going, and it's a never-ending cycle, which is really great because it's always a cycle of learning and growing.
It's very true. And then you see what someone else has done and you're like, oh, I can do that, and then you bring it in, and CSE is like, the students, that's not working for CSE at all, and you're like, okay, that's done, that worked really well in business, not going to work here. At least we know now.
100%. And I also see that you've written a few articles, not necessarily a few on teaching as well. Who's your target audience, and how do you make sure that target audience is reached?
Well, I mean, usually it's just, academic, you disseminate to other academics, I suppose, and lecturers lecturers. And so most of my stuff is about teaching. So I guess going out to journals and reaching other people that are teaching certain courses that will be interested in reading some of this stuff and putting it together, perhaps trying something that we've tried, reaching out to try something that we've tried, because I think the best thing you can do is also have those networks so that you can try different things, and not necessarily just things, in Australia or New South Wales, but having the overseas links, knowing other people and academics and lecturers at other universities try so many different things that perhaps work over there, and you can bring them over here and see if it works here. Something that works here can go over there. And so kind of that global thing allows you to really, keep up to date with what's going on, but also to try lots of different, is always fun.
And do you think you'll write more articles in the future?
Absolutely. We've got a few on the cards right now that actually I'm working a lot with Jake right now because he also does a lot in the education space, but we've got about 3 or 4 things in the works right now.
On anything in particular, or you can't talk about it too much?
There's like 2 things about CS1 courses and how we can help to retain students and help them learn better. There we go. Broad theme.
Absolutely. And what was one thing what has been the most pivotal learning moment in your career that's helped you with your teaching?
Pivotal moment. I mean, I think like those types of pivotal moments, I think there's, a whole bunch of little things that kind of come together to make these big changes. And I guess for the last few years, I found it really hard to not see as much of students because that was the part that I really enjoyed about teaching. So I think that's been not an enjoyable kind of like not being able to actually see faces and just see where they're at and just engage with them in that way. But I mean, there's positives as well, pivoting to that online and having, teaching in a slightly different way, trying to encourage the chatting happening. And I think there's been a lot more questions online because people are not as scared to ask questions as they were in the lecture theatre. So then what can you keep, if you go face to face, what can you keep from that online lessons? And I would keep the online questions because they work so well. And so, how do you put all of this together? I don't know, lots of little moments that kind of create a big pivotal thing at the end. I guess for me also was returning teaching was the pivotal moment when I was like, I think I'm done here in industry. I think I actually just want.
Absolutely. Did you always see yourself as a teacher? And how did you find yourself on that path?
So I think, Natalie, I think you've heard of this story because I just by accident, creeped everyone out at the tutor training with it. But when I was a kid, my favorite game was lining up all my dolls and, not having a tea party. No, I would teach them maths and things that we've covered at school, basically. And I think mum used to just walk in, laugh, and then walk out. Like, how ridiculous is. So I think that's always been something that I've loved doing. I've always loved teaching. I've taught, I did a lot of tutoring when I was at school, after school. So I was always kind of still teaching, even when I was in industry. And then things were not clicking. And so I at this point, I was like, okay, I think it's taken me a very long time. I was in industry for about 9 years, but I think it's time to go back to teaching. And that's, now that I'm here, yes, this is definitely where I want to be because I really do love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh
no, you can go, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So Sasha, I'm unfortunately never had the pleasure of having you as my lecturer, but you seem like a great teacher. So what steps are you trying to take to make yourself a better lecturer?
Feedback. So yeah, I usually gather feedback at the end of every lecture, try and put it into the lecture. I think, listening to critique of yourself is always really, really hard to do. And so putting yourself out there every week is also not that easy. And so just kind of, getting used to this idea of taking people's feedback and using that to improve your teaching has been really, really helpful. But also teaching everyone how to provide polite feedback, because I think that's a big part of it. Constructive, polite feedback is always taken, positively. Whereas if you just, if you're rude to someone, no one's going to want to talk to you. So, yeah.
And on the note of feedback, has that ever, what's the most impactful feedback you have been how you've received? So what feedback has been the most impactful and helpful for you?
I think, I don't know. So I guess on a weekly basis, just from the students, the really helpful stuff is knowing, have they kept up or have they fallen? Because then I can go back or I can go forward. Or if there's an aspect that is not understood, because I can explain it in a different way. And that's the other thing, there's 5 different ways to explain the same concept. And so you choose one, usually randomly, and hope. So if someone doesn't understand something, you can explain it in a different way or another different way. And so understanding where people are at is really important to be able to also then help them. And so I think that's part of it. I mean, I've also received very unhelpful feedback as well, but hopefully we're teaching everyone to provide constructive feedback. One of the this sounds silly, but like one of the most impactful feedbacks I've had was when I first set up my whole station during lockdown. And, I had this new microphone. I've got no idea I don't read manuals. That's, who reads manuals at CSE? Why are they so long? And so I had this microphone set up, and the student wrote me feedback every day to be like, you're using it wrong. The dot should be rotated down the bottom. Why is it facing up? It's going the wrong way. That's the wrong microphone. And so that was amazing though, because thanks to this student, my microphone is perfect now. And, it was 2 weeks to get it right, but they really talked me through it. That was super impactful.
100%. Sounds like you had an awesome bonding experience over that microphone.
I wonder who it was. I still want to know who it was.
Oh, it was anonymous?
It was anonymous. I would love to know who this was, just so that, maybe I'm doing other things wrong in my setup. They could tweak everything.
I definitely think that in CSE, everyone is super helpful, and there's definitely a community around helping others and supporting others. Whereas I feel like maybe in some other industries, there's a bit more of a culture of gatekeeping, or essentially trying to just not sharing information as much. But it's so nice to know that in CSE, there's always been this community of sharing knowledge and helping others. Sorry, that was just a tangent.
No, absolutely. And it's true. And I often think, because we do all the plagiarism checks as well. And I'm like, is this stopping all the collaboration? Oh, this is making me so sad. But you do have to learn how to write some code on your own too. But it is nice. The collaboration is really like exactly what you said, the gatekeeping. It's got to stop, because together we've got like increased brain power, and increased creativity. There's like an increased load. Like you can take so much more, you can solve such much bigger problems. So it's so exciting to work together.
100%. And on that topic, I guess knowledge is like the main focus here. Do you think, is there a way, let me rephrase that question. Do you think knowledge should be more accessible? So for example, papers, maybe they have a bit more jargon and the language is a bit more complicated. Should lecturers and researchers, essentially, should they make papers more accessible to the general public?
So I think papers in their current format to the general public would be quite because a lot of these studies have stats in them, and the stats are very detailed, and unless you know anything about stats, it's less and it doesn't make any sense. Jargon doesn't make any sense. I think depending who you are trying to reach, that's who the information should be disseminated for. Like that's what the information, at the level at which it's delivered, how much jargon you use and how accessible it is. So I think it's important to have it's still important to have the papers for other academics that are reading into it, which is more technical side of things, but it is also important to be disseminating this information out to the wider public as well, in a language that's more understandable and that reach people, because otherwise there is a lot of false information going around as well, which is not, as we've seen over the last few years as well in particular, and it's really important for the science communities to be able to reach the general public as well. So yeah, but in a language that is understandable.
Yeah, for sure. It's important that we have all these academic papers that not everyone can understand, but to a high level where it can be analyzed better. So is there a particular article that you wrote that you're most proud of?
No, the one that was, I had one that I was quite, but I never finished it. Talk about lack of motivation. Yeah, it was just, there was too many things happening in my life. Actually, I was meant to finish it, but then the first lockdown happened and there was no childcare, there was no nothing, and suddenly nothing was possible. And now I feel like it's been on ice for too long. So now onwards to bigger and better.
That's fair. And since we're not in lockdown anymore, is there a favorite place you like to go on campus?
Oh, on campus. I was actually walking on campus on Monday night. I don't know, because I went to uni at UNSW as well. And things have changed a little bit, but it still feels very nostalgic to be walking down that walk, when the sun is setting and like the sky is all lit up beautifully. I don't know. It's just, the whole thing is just very nostalgic for me. But a lot of spaces that I used to love going are no longer there. There's buildings there now. I'd like to say I'm in the uni bar, but not anymore. I haven't been there for a very long time.
I think all my time on campus, I've never been on the village green. It's always been under construction whenever I've passed by it. So I've actually had a chance to go there. I've had the great barbecue, but definitely agree on the walkway, especially when you're at the scientific building and the sun is setting, and then it's just perfect.
Yeah, I took the most beautiful photo on Monday night, and I didn't know who to share it with. I should have just shared it with, the Twitter account. But as I was taking this photo, another 4 or 5 academics who were walking to the same thing stopped to take exactly the same photo. It was so beautiful. And it was just such, I don't know, it was just that beautiful cold night, that beautiful, I don't know, it felt like we should have been, I don't know, roasting marshmallows and singing songs, but we were not.
100%. And I guess just to wrap it all up, wrap up this podcast, do you have any advice for students or anyone in general, anyone who's listening?
Yeah, be nice to yourselves. I don't know, students, I find, you're all so busy these days. You're involved in everything, and then you do internships. Be nice to yourself. Take breaks, give yourself time to just sit down and do nothing for a little bit as well. And, if you don't understand something, walk away from it for a little bit, come back to it, ask lots and lots of questions. Most academics love being asked questions, especially about, our topics, because we can talk about it for hours. So it's, I love questions. Ask me lots of questions, and mostly everyone wants to help you. So, reach out for help when you need help. Look after yourselves. It's been a really tough few years for students in particular, I think. So, it's nice. Everything's coming out of lockdown. Enjoy that social aspect of university as well, because I think that was really, really missing. And, you go to university to be, to meet other people and to be part of these clubs, which is so exciting and a huge part of your university life. So yeah, that's
absolutely. Thank you for that great piece of advice. So thank you for coming onto our podcast, Sasha. It's been a pleasure chatting. I've been Cressida with Natalie, and this has been Talking with Us, UNSW Women in Technologies podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I think this is the end of the podcast, but I do have one pressing question, which I have to ask everyone. What is your favorite weird food combination? If you want ideas, my favorite is a peanut butter, cheese, and onion sandwich. I know it sounds strange, but it's exactly like Thai peanut butter sauce. And I can't get over how good it is.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just go there. All right. You know the Marie biscuit, Arnott's Marie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lathered with sour cream. Tastes like cheesecake.
I'll have to try that.
It sounds disgusting, but it's the whole thing. It's beautiful.
That sounds amazing. Sour cream is just so good.
Sour cream
so
is good.
It's so good in everything.
Oh, I have barbecue sauce on everything. So on rice, it tastes good.
If you were a child, not tomato sauce.
No, barbecue's better.
Barbecue is pretty good.
Yeah.
But I got to stand with tomato sauce, gang.
But barbecue sauce on rice, I have got to see this one day.
It's good combo.
I can see. Yeah, now I've the last few years I've been into the barbecues, but tried it on rice. That's a good idea, because otherwise rice can be a bit nothing.
Well, some people put tomato sauce on sushi. That's also good.
Oh God.
That is a massacre of sushi.
Whatever floats your boat, right?
I do eat some weird things that people are like, what is that? And I'm like, what do you mean? That's normal. But it's not normal. So that's a fun question.
As long as you enjoy it, I don't think there's any reason to stop.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. You should just be yourself. That's
Mm.
and that's the beauty of being at CSC. You can be, because everyone else is just as crazy as you and as weird as you. So
Even though they might not show it secretly, they definitely are.
absolutely, it takes a very special type of person to go into.
Yeah, it's such a good community as well.
It definitely can and is a lot of the time.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this podcast and talking to you, Sasha, as well. So, do you have any questions for us?
No, I'm so, none of this stuff was at uni when I was at uni. I'm so excited to see all of these committees and clubs appearing, and places for, like, women to kind of get together, and also kind of make it, letting others know that it's a nice place to be and it's inclusive, and come join us. I think that's really exciting that that's finally happening. We used to run these primary school girl workshops to try and get them early in primary school, but that's not been run for a while, but I think they're starting to go back. But it's so exciting things. I think they make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's more of a movement towards earlier education of bringing computer science, because like from my high school, we didn't have it as an elective or anything. It was more you would have to do your own research to find out more about comp sci. So it's really good that we're moving more towards bringing up this earlier education of, hey, there's comp sci available for people, and just being aware that this is an op study.
Absolutely, you're so right. Yeah, and it used to be a very, it was a much smaller course. When I was at uni, there was not this many people doing it, but it's still like, I would love to see it become like 50-50, because women were in computing first. Damn it, we were the leaders, and then the advent of the personal computer, and off we go into the background. My mum was one of those women with the supercomputers. There's photos of her in like huge heels. She used to do the night shift, like 70s, short dress, like the whole vibe is just there. Big hair, and I loved that, and then as it kind of got on, you just stopped, all interest stopped. So
that's so cool how your mum was it with supercomputers, so yeah, that connection as well.
That's really awesome. Like with the giant books of code, like the handwritten books.
And they used to have to swap out the punch cards and stuff.
All right.
And so it had to be run, they couldn't stop them, so it was like you had night shifts and day shifts. And mum she loved heels, so she was always in heels, but everyone always wanted huge bulky things. But it made it easier because we're all sort of short in my family. It made it easier to reach up to be able to swap out the punch cards. But it's like a huge computational place. So I don't know. I mean, times have changed. I don't need to be doing that, but it's amazing in what a short period of time it's all changed.
Absolutely, it seems to run in your blood.
I love to tinker. So
100%. Thank you so much.